Feels like a very long time ago, but welcome back to the Mike Oldfield Discography podcast. This was supposed to be, actually, I'm slightly confused because I can actually see myself talking, like the transcription is coming in on my phone, so I can actually see what I'm saying.
Well, maybe you shouldn't look.
I shouldn't look. It's just distracting. Yes, this was supposed to take place, well, probably something like 2 months earlier, and then we didn't manage to finish it before your, Markus, your trip to the States.
Yeah.
And my vacation, and but looking back, I'm actually glad we didn't record it early because it gave me so much more time to listen to this album Voyager, which I did listen to quite a bit at the time, but not that much in between.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say that the extra time has given me a real new appreciation for it. So it's going to be interesting for me because I'm here really. I just really in the mood of this album. And I remember you actually, when you were talking about the podcast, I think you actually specifically, it was mentioned Voyager as one which you didn't, I think, get into that much.
Yeah, not at the time.
Yeah.
Not at all.
That's really going to be really interesting for me.
Hey, so since you were born in the Netherlands, I think I bought Voyager in the Netherlands when I was on vacation in the Netherlands. And which year was it? 96?
Yeah. Actually, by the way, I wasn't living in the Netherlands anymore at that time.
I know, but still there's kind of this strange coincidence. I was there on vacation with my girlfriend at the time, and I bought the album there in a small store somewhere by the sea. I don't remember where that was, actually. You're exactly right. I was on tour now I was away for 7 weeks, and the funny thing is, it relates quite a bit to this album, Voyager.
Yes, and the name.
The name, no, that's not what I meant. Part of the tour was canceled, and fortunately I found a friend that I could stay with in Oakland, California for over 2 weeks. I was with him, and he is or at least partly of Irish descent. And he, I was there for 3 Sunday mornings, and he was listening to a radio show, like a 4-hour radio show of Irish music every Sunday morning.
Wow.
And he really religiously, listened to the show from beginning to end, and it was very interesting to being exposed to that much of Irish culture. And I was reminded of really how much music Mike has made over the years that was sort of influenced by his own ancestry.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And also, now we're talking about traveling. I was in Switzerland, in the Ticino region, Italian-speaking region of Switzerland, and we were in a really, really small town. Just there's a smattering of houses, and reading up on the history, it's mostly famous for its Roman bridge, which crosses the river there, which tourists use to jump off of into the water, which looks horribly dangerous. And this is actually an old Celtic region. And it was really interesting. I mean, Voyager starts off with a track which is a cover of a composition by a Spanish artist whom we also got to work with. So there's Celtic culture all across Europe. It all was associated with Ireland, but there's a lot of it in other regions of Europe, France, of course. Mm-hmm. And so even though I don't think that is a concept, it could have been a concept, and it sort of starts off with that. But it was really interesting to think of that in connection with the album, the spread of Irish culture through Europe, the subtle influences which may be present still, even beyond Ireland and Scotland.
Is that Basque country actually where?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it is. You're right. Like there, with Celtic culture, there is sort of like a potential for international,
Yeah.
for lack of term, right? But still, you're right. That's not the concept really here of Voyager. If like, I really don't know what the concept originally really was, but it's funny. Like I think Tom Newman is listed as a
Yeah.
as an engineer on this album still, which may again which may mean that it started out as something a little bit different from what it turned out to be.
Yeah, I have my thoughts on some of these 90s albums. The same with the Songs of Distant Earth. Probably the Songs of Distant Earth didn't actually turn out to be what maybe the record company and its management and he discussed in the beginning. Because I think if he had wanted to, he could have made the Songs of Distant Earth like a huge success. Probably would have had to make it more conventional, more in the missions assignment maybe was something like create an electronic listening album with influences from different cultures and base it on a sci-fi story. And I think it just turned out to be something far bigger and deeper and more interesting than that. And this one maybe too. I mean, if you think about it, this idea, turning towards Celtic culture and making something which could appeal to the downbeat scene, the chill out rooms. I think there was huge potential for that. That's not what it ended up being again. So I think maybe that was an idea which they discussed beforehand. But in the end, this is actually, even though I think many people think of this as an electronic album, it's actually almost exclusively acoustic with a few electronic pads in between. It's just the way he arranged it, which gives it a less of an acoustic feeling.
There are some keyboard sounds in there that really do not sound acoustic at all. And actually, there are also a few sounds there that I still find hard to pinpoint what exactly they are. Yeah. Could be like the Roland guitar synth or something.
Yeah, there was also, I read the review in All Music, which is very negative, of the album, called The Bagpipe Synthesized. And I thought, this is nonsense. And then I thought about it, but I don't think the booklet actually lists bagpipers, so maybe they are.
I think it does. It does.
Yeah?
Yeah.
My CD copy actually is just the one. It doesn't actually have a proper booklet, which is really weird. It's supposed to be eight pages. This one is just one page insert.
Interesting.
Which is really weird.
Yeah. No, there are only 4 Oldfield compositions on this, I think 10-track album, which obviously is something really, really, really different. And just that makes it something very different in terms of within the catalog.
Yeah,
for sure. And also, like I think I may have read that same review, which is extremely dismissive, and but pointing towards an interesting fact that maybe that kind of music, that style of music, that sort of idea of like cheesy new age world music was very popular in the mid-90s, and that is true.
Yeah.
And also because of like listening to that Irish radio show with my friend, I also read up on Enya a little bit. And Enya's first album was released in '87 maybe or something, and it was just such a huge success. So again, like you were pointing out, like during the other podcast we were doing about Mike's discography, that quite often we or people get the timeline a little bit wrong. And in this case, it's really interesting to see how some of the sounds, like in '95, they were already old. You know, like it's so really it wasn't like he was either chasing the past or chasing the future, for that matter. It really seems like either something that just happened, like the choice of like you say, the keyboard pad sounds or something, or it was actually something that was imposed by some A&R people.
Well, the story is, of course, that it was originally entirely acoustic, and then he played it, I think, to them. And the daughter, was it Clive
Banks?
Banks' daughter, I think, said it needs a little more pep or something. And then supposedly he spiced it up a bit. Actually, I think when we're talking about concept, there would have been like lots of possible concepts to make this really interesting. And I think if he would wanted to do it, he would have done it. So I think the album is the way he wanted it to be. But because clearly something was inserted later, like the beats, there's beats on a few, and the pads. I think it makes it interesting precisely because it doesn't have a concept. It's just a collection of tracks, and each one has its own sound, but there's still connections between them. I just like that. But supposedly that was how it happened. So it may have sounded a bit different. But then there was a story by John Myers, who plays fiddle and tin pipes, I think, on the album. He's one of the excellent musicians playing here. And I read, he wrote in the forum, the short contribution. He said, I played on Mike's Reel, which is the B-side to one of the tracks, which is not on the album. And he said, we experimented with hip-hop beats, and it was a very different version. We did a very different one, but it was never published. And they had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, Mike's Reel is sort of like a kind of like a wonderful little piece because it does have that totally homegrown flavor, and much more Irish and less world music feel. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, you were talking about beats here, right, on the final product. I mean, the beats, to me, they seem like they're all of acoustic sources. It's mostly the Boran, you know. I think in that case, in that sense, he's kind of like stayed true to the vision of whatever, using Irish instruments also.
Yeah. It's almost,
But still, yes, maybe the way it's sequenced or looped or something like that, still very much in the vein of what the template that was set with Tubular Bells too.
Yeah.
Right? So...
Yeah. I think, so something, maybe just to place it in the time, and maybe that also explains the tone, because Mike's Reel is really different. So I think it's a fantastic track, which could probably easily be swapped out for one of the album tracks, but it doesn't quite fit the mood. I think this sort of ethereal, slightly dreamy mood which the album has. And I saw a clip of Narada Michael Walden recently, where he talks about how he met Mariah Carey for the first time. And he says Tommy Mottola told him, okay, here's a great singer I want you to work with, but listen, don't start anything with her. Like, essentially, you tell him, don't bang her. And then Michael said, oh, I'm in a committed relationship. I would never do it. And I thought, okay, so this is incredible how people talk to each other in the 90s. Like this. And I was surprised he would openly share it on Instagram. But I thought, man, this is really the time where the 90s was such an incredibly lucrative time for record companies. Like, usually we associate the 80s with this excess. But really in the 90s, you had the reissuing of the entire vinyl catalog on CD. You had the endless remastering campaigns. Record companies were so successful in pushing product. Like, it was an insane time to be there. And I think in this time, like at the height of the 90s, Mike comes in with this album, which is super quiet, no vocals, purely instrumental, without the typical samples you would associate with this kind of music, like, and still manages to sell more than 500,000 copies. I think, I know, that's interesting to me, that he goes, and maybe it's sort of an instinctive or emotional counterweight to this excess of the 90s. Because it's really so, even there's is it Dark Island or Flowers of Forest? I think one of these has this. I think Dark Island where there's this break in between. There's this middle section where there's a sort of a dance movement.
Yeah.
That's the only up-tempo moment really of the entire record. Other than that, and even that is sort of, he doesn't go into excess. He never really pushes. And there's a lot of where like there's feedback and there's distortion, but he contains it. Like he was doing Tai Chi at the time a lot, and like, somehow it feels to me like he's withdrawing. He's withdrawing to his island, building his own home again. It seems to be a counterpoint to the to this loud, super fast-moving 90s, where he's sort of building his own world again, and again with Celtic music, which is his home.
Again, I think that's sort of like the new age thing, really, that you're describing here. Remember that when we were talking about Songs of Distant Earth, that, or even with Earth Moving, when we were saying, okay, maybe there's sort of like a purpose to create a certain material or to create a new career path.
Yeah.
And I think with Songs of Distant Earth, this idea that it's music that can be licensed, that can be used for nature documentaries or space documentaries, or in this case, like nature, like with this Irish music, and certain kind of image comes to mind, and also the cover is sort of like pushing that in several ways, in strange ways actually. So that's sort of like how I see this in a way, and maybe not intentionally like by Mike, but by the business, that things were pushed in this direction. So like, what kind of shelf life can this music have in the licensing world? And that's sort of like how I see it, and how I think the production, at least in the way that it turned out to be, the final version, is sort of like very clearly influenced by something like that. Also, like something I realized just the other day, there was also Carl Jenkins and Mike Rutledge doing Adiemus at that time.
Yeah.
Which, as we know, Mike later, the Soft Machine, some of the people who were in Soft Machine actually, who had this huge financial success with Adiemus in the 90s. And Mike then worked with Carl Jenkins on the music of the Spheres album. So anyway, so we see that some sort of maybe there's a sort of connection also here with this development that was actually within his peer group, that we're not so sure about, that we don't really know. How connected was he still to the Canterbury scene, right? Which is kind of funny if you think about it, that the Canterbury scene people actually managed to have financial success. And so in a way, even though Mike was the one out of that scene who initially had the huge success, and then the success was sort of like fading over time, and maybe he took inspiration from that as well.
Maybe.
And especially with Mont Saint Michel, which is the first time that he had used or had written an orchestral piece. Also, Mont Saint Michel also has like an up-tempo section in the middle.
Yes.
But because it's played with the orchestra, it feels has more gravitas.
And actually, the section I mentioned isn't actually up-tempo. It's just, it has more pronounced dance, like slowly danceable rhythm.
Yeah.
It's not that.
The classic tick, 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 the galloping rhythm.
I love that section. I always wanted it.
Yes, with the mandolin, like the single mandolin. And, sounds fantastic.
That, by the way, the original is actually interesting. That the original is one of the few where I say, okay, I really prefer the original. I think the original is beautiful and slightly more. It has a sort of a tangy flavor to it, and in his version, it's more mellowed down. But that middle section isn't in the original, so that's entirely his own, and that is cool.
Yes.
That's really makes it different.
It's kind of Mike is not credited as a composer on that record, just as of that song, as an arranger, and even though he could have claimed that section.
Yeah, as far as I know, the credits are entirely pretty wrong on most of the tracks actually. Quite a lot of what is marked as traditional is actually you can actually.
Really on Wikipedia we have the actual writers. Well, some of which are probably the songs were already in the public domain, maybe, and maybe that's why they didn't credit them properly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that in the publishing they got it right in some form. Because you mentioned this with reinventing himself, there was an interesting thing with the photographer. Let me just find this. The photographer is...
So for Tobias really has 10 pages of notes here.
A bound book. I'm just trying to find. Because the photographer is he was a huge this album. It may seem like it's really mellow and unremarkable, but really no expense was spared. There were a few remixes done, which were excellent, I think. Probably most Mike Oldfield fans will disagree, but I think actually there's a System 7 remix of Women Over Ireland, which is amazing. And then there's this Lurker mix, which uses the melody, and I think maybe going for something like a William Orbit kind of crossover success. I think they're great. And the photographer is actually, he was one of the defining visual artists of the 90s. And he did lots of stuff. He also did Enya, for example, by the way.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's clearly a lot of thought into that. And I found an interesting quote on his webpage, which I'm not going to find now, but it was interesting that he actually says that in his photography he's actually looking to with the artist transform the image of the artist, which is interesting. He also did, for example, Genesis, We Can't Dance, and there's a great photograph. I think the cover is not that great, but the photograph of the trio sitting at the end of a party. They still have sort of party hats on. I think Philip is wearing a crown, like a plastic paper mache crown, and they're completely broken and look like it's been a long night. I think there's lots of this. It's interesting. I'm not quite sure if I agree with the choice of photo they used for the final product here, but clearly,
I remember that I've seen some photos in progress, let's say, from that session. And some look better.
Yeah.
Like the one chosen in the end is really. I mean, in a way, I don't really have any, emotions about this photograph. I think it's fine. I think Mike looks great. Like he really has.
He's really fit. Yeah.
Yeah, he's really fit and good looking. And sort of like the reference to funnily enough, to the Incantations cover, right? It's
yeah.
I'm funny that I haven't heard anybody say that before, but yes, like the little rock in the back is the same shape. Yeah. So I don't know, and maybe the henna tattoo on the arm, that was also of the time.
I just think that the leather straps are sort of what.
And is it an inverted cross actually on his chest? Probably not inverted.
Probably not. No. It's definitely not Mont Saint-Michel in the back, as far as I know. I think it was actually taken close to his home.
Yeah.
David Scheinman, by the way, is the photographer. And the quote is, his work explores issues of cultural identity and popular iconography. He challenges, reappropriates, and subverts our popular icons. I was just thinking that it explicitly says cultural identity, which is exactly what this album, in a way, is about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but again, I think it's also, by, just as a personal side note, it's the album which really made me want to become a music journalist, mainly because of the response it got. The All Music review is dismissive, but there was a much worse one in the German version of Rolling Stone magazine, which was just 2 or 3 sentences long, and it was so bad. It was so just clearly, I think music journalists saw their opportunity to bash him, because this album was an easy target in a way, and I think that the cover in a way didn't help.
Hey, by the way, before I forget, so I just checked. So the I don't know, the first song is it's not a Basque country band. They're from Galicia.
Wow.
So, but still northwestern Spain, so north of Portugal.
Yeah.
And Celtic, yes. Celtic influence there.
And it's a very interesting version, because the original is clearly far more folky and entirely acoustic.
It's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful melody, really, really special. And I think Mike's version is, it's beautiful. It kind of, to me, I don't know, that was not a single, right? That was not released as a single.
No,
but for me, it would have been like the one song that would have fit that that vibe of like a beer commercial, let's say, or of that time. There was
Corona.
Or but anyway, like more of a German beer at the time. German beers were promoted like.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Lifestyle.
There were some Irish flutes and the landscape images.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's true. It's the band. They played.
I don't know how to pronounce Luana Luble or something.
They played together, and I saw a performance where they. I think he played a few of Songs of Distant Earth after them, and they played before me. It was like a huge crowd. And they played these super quiet, intimate Celtic folk pieces. It was amazing. I thought it was incredible.
Yes.
That something like that was possible in front of such a huge crowd. And the singer, the female vocalist, actually then later turned up on Tubular Bells 3.
Yes. She played cello and sang on that album.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's maybe something which maybe you may not know, is that I thought a bit about the title. Yeah. At the time, I didn't really think about it too much. It's just a title. He was asked in an interview, is the idea the Voyager sort of meant as the... let me just see what they asked him. Like a voyage back to the traditional melodies of his beginning after going into electronic music for Songs of Distant Earth and Tubular Bells 2. And he said, no, it's more of an inward journey. And then he mentioned Tai Chi and so forth. But there's an interesting story I found, and this may be subconscious for him, but in 1981, old Mike was on tour in Germany. And there was a musician, Reinhard Sauer, I think is his name, and he asked for an interview with him. And managed to get an interview, and they met in Offenbach, close to Frankfurt, the little ugly sister or brother of Frankfurt. So they hit it off, and then they get him talking. He gets him talking and engaged by mentioning that he just spoke to Klaus Schulze about the Fairlight and so forth, and then they exchange creative points of view. And then this musician tells him, I'm just working on an album at the moment, which is sort of in this Berlin school style of electronic music, and I would love for you to give me a dedication, just for like the liners, just something small written on a napkin, whatever. And so Mike says, I'll give you one if you I'll give you 30 seconds to give me 3 reasons why you're making electronic music, rather than sort of handmade music. And at first he feels a bit put in place, but then he says, okay, listen, the first thing is I just love anything technical. The second is I think it says I'm German. And the third one I'm just going to give to you as a present. Something like that. And it's good enough for Mike, so he writes him a dedication for the album. And the album comes out, and people still listen to it and say it's pretty cool. It's a combination of sort of rock and this Berlin school style. Now, this album was released in 1981 by a band called Velvet Voyage, and it's not Velvet Universe or something. So it's clearly a Schulze reference.
Yeah.
And the album in 1981 is called Voyager. I just find that incredible. Actually, he stays in touch with Mike, and Mike invites him to his house, and they once even visit him in Wales, I think, or somewhere.
I had not heard about this at all.
No, it is complete. I don't know how I found this, but it's there on the web to read for anyone who's interested. It's maybe we can put up a link. It's a really cool blog entry, just the way he tells it. I'm pretty sure that they were in touch, and maybe sort of this title was maybe subconsciously on his mind. It seems like could have been. Because Voyager is not an obvious title for the album. But anyway, just...
I think this was also the time, and obviously, like really what we're saying here is just not scientific at all, okay? So, but that was also the time when Mike was sort of like researching some of his ancestry. And there are like more stories about that later, even about the Man on the Rocks album, and where Mike was, and also like I remember reading Terry Oldfield's book. There were some references and some stories about Mike sort of researching, and that's also where the Voyage kind of comes in, and also like the Changeling, the idea of change really. For me, at least for me, it has a lot to do with being a Voyager. Like it's sort of like interconnected, change and physical movement, both in time and space. Yeah. Right.
And interestingly, you mentioned this, like you said something which is almost an exact quote of him by the time you said something like the future and the past. And finding maybe sort of a middle ground. I'm not quite sure, but that's exactly what he said in an interview at the time. He said he read Stephen Hawking's a lot at the time, and Hawkins, I'm not quite sure if he misunderstood him, but I wasn't aware of this. But Hawkins apparently said that the future and the past, these are just terms, human terms for trying to make sense of time. But in reality, you could be in the future if only you could get your mind to stop categorizing it as such and just open yourself up. Yeah. And I think that's interesting because really the Celtic element is something which is always there. And I think we've hinted at that this catalog, his discography often, like you could probably change albums around. It's not like this typical linear thing. There seem to be albums which are out of time or come back to something, but it's not coming back. It's almost like it could have been at the same time. I don't know. It's interesting that he mentioned it explicitly.
Yeah, cross references in his catalog really with this album I find interesting. Okay. So first of all, remember that there was an interview also around 81 where in a backstage area, Mike was asked about when are you going to make your folk album, and then he was saying, well, this is what I just did. It's the QE2 album, which he sort of considered to be folk and Irish music kind of, and it has the track called Celt on it, right? So that I find interesting, and then also like the Flowers of the Forest, for example, like the main melody has the same first 3-4 notes as the bagpipe section of Tubular Bells, which then was released as Mike Oldfield's single in a different arrangement. So I see like these references going back, and then this is the album really where he invented a new, like, remember, like, it was 89 was the Earth Moving album where he had new guitar sounds suddenly that then, you know, changed the sound of the next couple albums a lot. And I think here he also discovered this new sound, which is this huge reverb, reverb and delays, which back then I didn't realize really how much of a pioneering thing that was. Like, I don't know why, maybe for me, coming from within music rather than being a consumer, for me it sounded like, yeah, you just put this huge thing on the guitar, but then realizing that it really is something that had not really been done in such a way. And I think maybe I mentioned this before as well. Once I started becoming familiar with Devin Townsend's music, I mean, Devin is a contemporary artist, really successful artist that I worked with, and Devin does this kind of very similar thing. I was thinking, like, where did you get this idea, right? And it turns out that, you know, Devin is a big fan of the Voyager album, and so maybe. I'm not saying that he just took that idea from that album, but it's sort of like, obviously we have all these influences, and I think there is something quite progressive in a way about how he was using the guitar and how he's playing the guitar. I think the guitar performances on this album are outstanding, and I think he's using a semi-acoustic PRS guitar on this record, which has a very unique sound. And it's also recorded in a way where you can hear a lot of the, let's say, the fretboard action, the sounds of the fingers on the strings, and it's done in a very interesting way. We don't have any information about it. We don't know how it was recorded, which technology was used, really.
Let me just, because I've done this before, but let me just read what Changeling says about the album, and then I'll let you talk, because it's really interesting.
Okay.
Before I was in Ibiza, I'd been working on a Celtic album, which ended up being called Voyager.
Yeah.
That's what he writes in Changeling about this album.
That's it.
That's it. And there are no liner notes. Like, if there was ever any album where you would want Mike to write liner notes, because you'd say, okay, the Celtic music, this is something close to his heart. This is clearly must have some, he mentioned the word ancestry, this must have some personal background, and there's nothing, like nothing.
I mean, the personnel on the record is sort of like a who's who of, you know, like, and also that isn't apparent. Like, I think it's kind of watered down, maybe by the PR, by the look of the album, and eventually also by the sound of the album. That these are actually great performances. We have the London Symphony Orchestra, all sorts of. Actually, there are 4 Highland pipers actually credited in the yes, and there's actually Noel Eccles is listed as percussion. This is also something that, like, even now I'm discovering, like, new things.
Yeah, there's also what someone mentioned for programming, which I would have also thought that maybe it's just the track, the Voyager, but that one has probably programmed beats. I'm not quite sure what else could have been programmed.
Yeah, Noel Eccles is from the Chieftains, actually, as far as I can see now here, which is incredible. And as we know, like, anyway, going back to these references to other tracks or other, one of the very first things, because, like, as you know, maybe 1982 was my first concert, Mike Oldfield concert that I saw. And it was also in that year that Mike played at that Eberhard Schöner event in Munich, which was the rock and pop night or whatever it was called. I can't remember. And there were like a lot of musical stars there. And there was a segment where Mike and Paddy Maloney and Maurice Purd. You don't know this? Or
No, I don't.
You don't know this?
Sorry.
This is like the most amazing, beautiful, kind of moving performance that Mike has ever done. They play a traditional piece or a couple of traditional pieces together, and it's beautiful. It's Mike playing both acoustic and electric guitar, and it's so wonderful. And it's really like maybe the most traditional that you can ever really hear him, and it's live, and with Paddy Maloney playing this with just such a beautiful tone, and then Maurice Purd playing just a single drum. It's incredible, and it for me that is sort of like the reference point for what sort of like a Celtic album sort of could have been. And funnily enough, it is the backpipe guitar from Tubular Bells that sort of like comes to mind when listening to that performance, and actually also parts of QE2. It's true that I think there's more really in QE2 than we're aware of that.
Maybe I should have listened to it while I was listening to this one.
Yeah, but anyway, like this. So like sonically, Mike was going forward from Voyager, but like the musical material sort of was a backwards thing, we could say, or an introspective thing. In that sense, introspective, and somehow, funnily enough, with Mont Saint-Michel, it was also sort of futuristic in the sense that, like, obviously, like Mike had performed with an orchestra before, also at that rock and pop night in Munich in '82, but this time really, like playing there's no electric guitar on that track. It's acoustic guitar that Mike's playing there, and it has also this beautiful synth sound, which I don't really know what it is.
It's sort of the Kitaro. I have to think.
Yeah, some people will know which synthesizer produced that sound, but I don't. If anybody of you knows that, let us know. That lead sound is beautiful.
Yeah, insane.
Yes, and in just the way it blends, really, everything blends on that track is cool with the acoustic guitar, and it is totally sort of like a predecessor of the music of the Sears album in that sense.
Yeah, and sounding better at it.
Yes, it sounds better too. Yes. Yeah.
By the way, talking about references, that track, clearly some of the themes in that one hark back to the traditionals. And then I'm not quite sure if I'm wrong here, but I think the closing chord of Mont Saint-Michel is actually almost identical to the closing chord of the wind chimes. And then you have this sort of, the melodic progression is da, 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 which is very, very similar to the Omadon guitar final, where you actually, just in minor, then of course played in minor. On the
Yeah, interesting. Oh, yeah. I've never made those connections. That's true. Like the most amazing thing about this is that there's no Tubular Bells on Voyager until the last 3 notes, which are 3 hits on the Tubular Bells, right? And that's leading us into Tubular Bells 3. So it's really, I don't think that these little details are. No. This is by design, and it's interesting. It's really cool.
The System 7 remix actually has a reference to the Tubular Bells sequence.
Yes, I remember.
So so that's very cool, actually.
Yeah. But anyway, I agree that the Mont Saint-Michel piece is sort of a better sounding version of what was done later. Even though like the sound on the Millennium Bell, which also has some of this setup, is actually, I think, the Millennium Bell for all of the things you can criticize. Has an amazing sound, that record.
Yeah, I'm not a hater with regards to that album.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's Henry Jackman credited for the programming. I just see that.
Which I don't know. I have no idea who that is.
Well, he worked with Mike a bit, quite a bit also, in following years.
It's interesting that it says program. I really would not like to know what he did. Ultimately, this one, talking about the sound, I think Voyager sounds great. You need a really good stereo setup, I think, if you want to get the most out of it. Because a lot of it is really spread out in the spectrum, and then you get to, and then you actually hear these the drum sound. Because I think, for example, the opening piece, it doesn't really have a rhythm track. It's just sort of loose percussive elements spread out, which give us sort of a slow, very slow pulse. But it gets really beautiful if you spread it out. It's also very nice if you listen to it on headphones and just turn it down a bit while walking outside. It blends really well, I think, with the environment, and for all of the minimalism of the arrangements, I think he uses he will have lots of tiny accentuations with different instruments in the parts where another instrument comes in to add to it, and it's really a color, like a lot of color in it, as simple as the music on paper is.
It has like, in terms of color, it has sort of brown tones in it, which really, I would say, which really is absolutely totally rare in Mike's catalog. And I don't know if it's the look of Mike's skin on the cover that I don't know, but there's something about it, about the guitar tones, that is just so earthy. Even though it is such, like, you could say, overproduced in the sense of reverbs and those synth tones, but there is still this earthiness to it, which is fascinating, especially in the context of his discography.
Maybe I had this idea also that, in a way, what makes the earlier albums so special is the synthesis and the transformation. Is that, for example, Tubular Bells. I listened to Hergest Ridge a lot again in connection with this one, because I thought I wanted to go back to the most Celtic he's been, and I think it's on Hergest Ridge and Armadon. Not so much on Tubular Bells, but of course the opening of Hergest Ridge has this melodic reference to Tubular Bells. And but then he switches to the trumpet, and then suddenly it's no longer Celtic. So that is the transformation which happens.
Yeah, I have to admit that Hergest Ridge for me is not Celtic.
It's maybe
it's more English.
Maybe it's more. I thought for example, the Tubular Bells B-side, that is for me typically English, but
where the Mike Oldfield single of the bagpipe guitars, that is sort of like the Irish, has sort of like more of the Irish vibe than any other section on Tubular Bells, I think.
I think anyway, but that, I think, is proof that there's a transformation going on.
Yes.
And here he puts it sort of open out. It's like a magician showing where the trick came from. And then on guitars, we have more of the blues. There's a sort of a little bit of blues on here on Wild Goose, flapping its wings.
Yes.
That, by the way, I don't know if you can talk about the guitar sound, because that one sounds great, I think.
It's one of these examples where he's sort of like finding a new way to express playing expressively on guitar.
So, but we have the Celtic folk, we have the blues on guitars, even more pronounced. It's actually blues on guitars.
Yes.
And then we have the orchestral element on Music of the Spheres, which is also here on Mont Saint-Michel. It's like he's now opening up his palette.
That's what I mean. It sort of like sets the tone for quite a few of his following albums.
Yeah.
Actually, also, like, we shouldn't forget that Robin Smith, who worked with Mike on Tubular Bells 2 on the performance, he was like the conductor of the band for the tours. Right? This was where he was helping Mike with the arrangement of Mont Saint-Michel and was also conducting. And we know that Robin is now kind of like the leader of the band that is playing Mike's music.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
that the
Yeah.
yeah.
So, do you remember what? Sorry.
One more thing that comes to mind with these references.
Yeah.
Like, I also think that 5 Miles Out has the Paddy Maloney on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it has the Morris dancing,
Yeah.
the Morris men on it, and there's also the cheesy pop song, you know, at the end, let's say, of the record. And there is like a technique Mike is using there, which I pointed out when we talked about the album, where you have the both sort of like the chorus and the verse, or like the verse and the bridge melody separate, and at some point they appear together, which is sort of like a very interesting, for me, just a very interesting uplifting effect, where suddenly like these two parts that seem to be that were separate sections, you realize it's really the same thing in a way, or it can be combined to make a new whole. And he manages to do that, funnily enough, here with at the end of Flowers of the Forest. I don't know if you ever paid attention to that. It's where the two main melodies are played at the same time. And
No, no.
I find that really wonderful and fascinating, how these little compositional details sort of find its way across decades of his career, right?
Cool. I have to check that out.
And also, like, remember that we have the Ora Bidu coda, Island's Eye, which, as far as I know, was not written by Mike, was written by Maggie, and who was there? It was not Tim Rennick.
No, it was the guy. I can't remember.
It was the other guitarist. Actually one of my favorites. I can't remember his name right now. We'll look it up. Anyway, like this, also the deep sound on Taurus 2 sort of has some sort of like vibe of a, you know. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of like complete that picture somehow. Yeah, sorry, like maybe you want to.
No, I wanted to ask you about. It doesn't sound like, when you talk about it now, it sounds. There's a lot of really interesting points. I'm curious why did not, like, the lack of connection to it. Just curious. As you say, the guitar performance is outstanding.
Yes.
It's coming from you as a guitarist, and then all of these very, like, the beautiful sound. Mont Saint Michel as sort of a standout orchestral piece.
Yes. I didn't really appreciate it at the time. I remember that maybe it was about 20 years later, so 2015, 16, when I remember I was sick in bed, and I was listening to this album, and it completely hit me. It completely hit me and triggered some tears, let's say. And it was just that I wasn't open for it, and I think that is kind of like always the case, and that's why with my favorite artist, my favorite musical artist, Mike Oldfield, I do have to give him the benefit of the doubt always, and I think there's still so much to discover for me in the music of his that somehow I have not let myself be moved by.
Yeah.
And it really is my responsibility to open up. It's not the artist who has to do that.
No, I agree.
Actually, shouldn't do that, really.
No.
So and
Couldn't even. I mean, how is that
couldn't
supposed to
of
go?
course couldn't. But I'm just thinking, like, also because of the recent release and re-release of all those Hergest Rich mixes, and I think, like, Mike Oldfield is one of the greatest living artists, and I have to say that living, because it is really special. There's this person that is still alive, that has this sort of like universal understanding and this universal influence on humanity. That is sort of like being completely not seen, and I was reminded of that just listening yesterday by listening to orchestral orchestrage.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way that's also like maybe why it makes things so different for or difficult also for Mike Oldfield fans, because he pushes the voyage and the change part really hard.
Yeah.
Right? So like it is understandable that some people are not able to travel with him or follow him.
Yeah.
And in a way, the Voyager sort of like in a sense always is a precursor, not only sonically but conceptually, for the music VR thing he did, the computer game, where the voyage is sort of the aim, is the game,
Yeah.
right?
The name of the game.
The name of the game, or the Tres Lunas album,
Yeah.
that, and then also the Light and Shade album that also came out of that. And we still find a lot of cross references, especially to Voyager and Songs of Distant Earth.
I find with this one really, I mean, what you're describing is pretty much also what I had. I mean, emotionally, I had sort of the similar moment when I was sitting at in Locarno at the sea, at the waterfront, and it was also a really warm day. We were sitting in the shade, and you're looking out across the water and listening to the music. Really had a similar effect on me. It's sort of maybe the situation is similar to the cover image, like being really like nothing urgent is worried. There's no worries, and then you can open up to the music. But I think it gets more interesting if you actually listen to some of the original, like in case if there's the originals or other versions that have been made.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes my impression was that, like if you take Women of Ireland, that's the one which was Belfast Child, right?
I think so.
And the one by the Christians in Words, which is, let me just see, is that, I can't remember which of these, but so there were clearly some
There's
people.
also like Dirty Old Town by the Pogues. That's
Yeah.
also like, I think Flowers of the Forest, right?
And
I think. I'm not sure.
John Myers, by the way, is also a Pogues member. So this could be. If you look at this, there's people who did more adventurous versions of this. But I think, and also there, of course, Women of Ireland has been done by Kate Bush and Sinead O'Connor. But I was listening to a lot of folk during my days at university, which was around this time. And it was always my impression that the point of these albums, like if say someone like the McCarthys they go into the studio and they record traditionals, it's not to put down the best version or a radically different version. You just keep the music alive and by playing it.
Mm.
And sometimes you'll hit on an inspired moment. And I think maybe that's what this is to a degree. It was recorded really fast. And probably of those 1.5 months where it was recorded, probably the longest time was probably the orchestral one. I think 2 or 3 pieces were supposedly recorded on a morning, on one day. And I think if you actually go deeper and check out the others and if you listen to this, give this album time, you discover that a lot of it is sort of oscillating, like in the music without being outspoken. I just feel like not everything is golden, but it never is. It's just it's a moment, and he captures it, and these are the pieces which like surely mean a lot to him, and really it's also pretty unique. If you I don't think there's many, as to my knowledge, versions where the guitar plays the lead melody. I know Jeff Beck did a few. Partly with like people like Andrea Corr, but I don't think there's anything like this album. It's really, so it's more interesting the more you go in.
I mean, the interesting thing is like I said, I was listening, with my friend Michael. I was listening to this radio show called Celtic Crush hosted by Larry Kirwan. And it was fascinating because like all the music he's playing on this show, which is a weekly show of 4 hours, I think, 3 or 4 hours, and it showcases lots of music with an Irish connection, or like even a direct quoting. And I remember that there was music from the early 90s there that was sort of like a crossover of sort of big beat music with African music and Irish jigs, and like also very funny how like these tropes, I would even call them, like of melodic tropes or stylistic tropes, you know, you were able to find the same phrase, let's say, over the radio show. You would hear the same melody like 4 or 5 times, and or more, and there's something very iconic about Irish culture in that sense, that it's very recognizable and also very strong, emotional, sort of very I don't know, I don't have the right English words for this, very human, melancholic. I don't know how I even arrived at this thought, but it was just fascinating, because that was also the time that I was listening to Fergus Rich, also with my friend Michael. We were listening to the new Atmos version and stuff like that, and we were taking walks. This was in Oakland, California, and we were taking walks, and we believe it. I mean, this was like one of the biggest goosebumps moments I had in recent years, walking through the neighborhood there in the hills, and somebody blasting Fergus Rich on his hi-fi system. Like I haven't experienced that in like 45 years, that I'm walking somewhere and I'm hearing actually Mike Oldfield being played loud. And that album that I had listened to just the night before. Anyway, like I think there's sort of, you say, like there's nothing like it. It's quite possible, like Voyager, right? As you were saying. It's true, but I wouldn't be surprised if there actually was, and we just don't know it.
Absolutely. I mean, I listened to tens and like really a lot of the like other versions just to get an idea of how people approach it.
What about Afro-Cal sound system, for example?
Yeah, don't know. I mean, that is definitely farther out.
Yeah, I'm just saying it was also like the same time that music was popular.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, I agree. I was surprised to find that it doesn't seem to be something very obvious, like obviously similar to this. But I agree. I mean, there's so many versions of some of these pieces out there. I just really realize that that there is a sort of if you like, there's versions of it by Kate Bush or Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah.
I don't think they're not that striking. Like, they don't hit you in the face either. They're just really beautiful if the moment is right. I mean, my impression is that this music. So if you want to hear the really great versions of some of these pieces, you have to go to an Irish pub in Dublin, which I did when I was there.
Yeah.
And people will just spontaneously get up and sing them.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, the wonderful thing again about Mike's playing and his gift, let's say, right? And this is something he said in some interview, or like I read somewhere, is where he can play anything and make it work, right? And in a way, that is kind of like what's happening here. Like, he just needs to play those melodies, and they'll move you, and it's kind of hidden in this sonic cloth, let's say, that some people may not really be drawn to or being pushed away with, actually. Yeah. But if you allow it to reach you, it is really, really incredibly beautiful.
Would be interesting to hear it without the pads at times. Would just be curious. I mean, the pads do a lot to shape the sound of the album, and I'm sure if you remove them, it would sound really sparse. But then I'd just love to hear it. And then especially coming after 9 tracks of that, to then go into the deep strings opening Mont Saint Michel, I'm just like that would be a real voyage.
Yes, and I was just reminded of the Celtic Rain, which is the second piece on the record, which is it's a Mike tune, right? And how simple that is, how simple, I mean, not simple, not simplistic. How delicate that melody is, how it fits with the theme of the record, how deeply traditional his way of his melodic understanding is, and he can play something like that, and it's really you wouldn't know, and that's what I love about Mike's compositions, about his melodies, that they have sort of like this universal, and I used that word just 20 minutes ago, I guess. There's something universal about what he does. And really in this record, that is sort of like a little bit lost. In Celtic Rain, for example, it's the sound of the harp, let's say, which we don't really know. Is it like it's a sample? It's a keyboard sound, and it's maybe already sounded dated back in the day, and somehow that's why the great composition, the great melody, sort of like get lost in that shuffle of the production choices, let's say, and that it's kind of, I mean, still I don't care, I don't mind. I just love listening to this record now, and I think it's also the kind of record that you can not necessarily play at any kind of party, right? You have, but it's some sort of get together of people. You can put this record on and it will work.
That's true.
You know, it will pull people together rather than separating them, I think. And
maybe it's also important to note that this was the first of his albums which was not released on vinyl at the time of its release.
yes,
Which I think is important. Just if you look at the way, I'm pretty sure this would have, at least the sequencing would have been different. Maybe even it would have been shorter. Or maybe some tracks would have been removed.
but I have to say I like the fact that these pieces are actually not shorter than they are.
No, I agree. I like
Because they're all over, like the shortest is 4:30, right? And like Women of Ireland is six and a half
that's
minutes
really
long,
Yeah.
right? And it does not get boring. Like it's really interesting how, like for the say the musical material in these traditional songs is minimal,
Yeah.
and how he's managed to kind of turn those into extended pieces. I really like that. One other thing on the technical side, where you were saying like vinyl, there was no vinyl. I think, and I don't remember where it was. This was the first time that there was a digital click on a Mike Oldfield record. I think it was on this record. I really don't know, but I remember that's what I identified back in the day. I haven't listened for it anymore, but there's a little slip in this.
I think it's really something that must have happened off the cuff, because in an interview at the time he said, I really don't like synthesizers and like all this electronic stuff. And then of course with Tubular Bells 3 he goes in the exact opposite direction again. And this album, as you say, it was probably produced digitally at least. I don't know. It was probably.
I mean, it still sounds. I think it sounds
warm.
very good.
Yeah, it sounds warm and nice.
Yeah.
This one would. I mean, it's so mixed so well in stereo that it's almost has a surround, like it has a binaural.
It has sort of like a three-dimensional feel to it.
Yes. It would be great to have this one as a surround mix and listen to it in the right space.
So, which one is your my least favorite piece on this record? For me is the title track.
Oh, that's one of my favorites. Yeah, that's
Yeah, there you go.
makes
See?
sense. And
Yeah. No, I mean, and because it kind of like pushes the the concept of that he started with the previous album with Songs of Distant Earth even more, where it's like the reduction, like more and more less layers.
yeah, this is almost like a hip hop thing to me. I mean, this is the way the bass is withheld and then comes in just a bit, but it's really deep and almost sub.
Yeah, but you know that's very much an Oldfield thing that he's always done.
But
Yeah,
in the
but-
context of this track, it
Yeah,
has
yeah.
sort of I don't know. It feels like and the dryness of the drums. I just love the dryness of the drums on this one,
Yeah.
and the way I was listening to it yesterday, just before I fell asleep, and the bagpipes, which are almost like they're playing at the other end of a huge hall somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
I don't know, but I get why. For me, it's probably actually it's the Flowers of the Forest because the least favorite because I think the album enters into a sort of a trance state with the Voyager, and then it has this incredible version of She Moved Through the Fair, which is completely unique because it has a chord in there where at the end of the cycle, which no other version has, where it just varies the chord, and I love that. And then I think to go into Mont Saint Michel, that is beautiful, but Flowers of the Forest sort of messes up that flow, even though it's a beautiful piece.
I think it's sort of like the most epic
Yeah.
on the whole album.
Yes, it is epic. Yes,
Um,
it could have been the end. Maybe if it had been the end without Mont Saint Michel, I would have been.
it has also the vocals, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, to me it sounds like Mont Saint Michel really is sort of the coda. It's something that's tacked on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it always felt to me like that actually. That it's really a different kind of work, but then it does fit. I mean, and it's sort of interesting because when you were saying like maybe it could have been shorter for vinyl, then it would have been like most Saint Michel that shouldn't have been on the record
Yes.
in a way,
Well, if they
right? Right.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's kind of cool as it is, and it's also like sort of like a mid-90s thing that you had the CD, which became more than the album. It became a tool for compilation.
Yeah. There's no symmetry you can find in this album to make sort of with the track listing. I've in my mind I've always tried to find sort of where is the cutting off point. There would have been. How do you split it? Could you make 4 vinyl sides out of it? Actually, the pressing they did in 2014, which I think most people agree isn't that great.
There's a new one right now.
With the color of that new one is the color of the background, so it's sort of pink, purplish.
Oh, really? Okay.
Not brownish. So there's no symmetry, and the vinyl version cuts it at Dark Island, I think. So the first one is Dark Island. So it ends with She Moves Through the Fairs on the A side, and then Dark Island. And I don't think that's a great cutting point, but there is no great cutting point. I think maybe She Moves Through the Fair, but then you have the B side, which is much longer.
Yeah, much too long actually. Also for vinyl.
It is already too long for vinyl. They should have made it a 2 LP. People would have, I think, bought it. But didn't they actually also do? Tubular Bells 2 is pressed on a single vinyl, which is pushing it. But that one is of course hard to split.
Yeah.
I just think you can tell sort of in the music that the sequencing changes. Maybe it's something like for a CD, it's quite cool that it doesn't have this symmetry. That sort of it just keeps going, and because once you've started listening to it and you commit to it, it does have sort of this immersive feeling where you're really like in a cocoon.
So the Dark Island track, I just checked, was composed in 1958.
Yeah, by Ian McLachlan, right?
Yeah.
And then I think it was a theme tune to a television series, and so it was really popular.
Ah, really?
Yeah, it's very beautiful. It's really.
It's a really interesting sort of compilation of songs and song ideas, and it's like really funny in a way. The wild goose flaps its wings, which is a Tai Chi movement.
Ah, okay.
I think.
Well, that makes sense.
I'm pretty sure it is. and to put this on a, like having this Asian kind of influence on this Irish record, it's interesting.
I mean, just one last from my end. But what I find interesting is that when I think of the Celtic, I always think of of Omadon, and but that of course also has this Indian influence, so I looked into it, the possible connections. It sort of suggested that it came maybe in like very early on, and then there's of course the traveling of the Celtic people, which may explain that there are similarities between Black American music and Celtic music as well in some of the dances. But one of the people who, of course, spoke about the Indian influence on Celtic folk is Davy Graham. And Davy Graham composed Angie, which was one of the pieces which Mike started when he was starting out to play the guitar, played. And Sally Angie is actually called after Sally and the piece Angie.
Yes.
So he must have been aware of Davy Graham's music. Which again, the Voyage, maybe that's also the Voyage. Anyway.
Yeah, and I still think this is one of the really. It's something that makes me sad that even though we have some information about Mike, really, but we don't really know. We still don't know what he is really like, what he really, and I think it's kind of sad, but in a way maybe it needs to be this way. Maybe the enigma is part of the thing, but I think there's just so much more lore in the person, right? That only found its way out through the lens of music production, managements, A&R, blah blah blah. So it's really difficult to kind of see what's going on behind the scenes. And yes, that's why I like what you just pointed out, this Angie bit, right? Like it's really there's so much interconnectedness that we're not aware of here. And I wonder what kind of what kind of influence this interconnectedness even had on the selection of these pieces.
Yep.
Right? What was first, really? Was Mont Saint-Michel something he had in mind, and then he added the rest? Or is it the other way around? The Song of the Sun, where has he first heard that? I think maybe there's that information out somewhere. Yeah.
You heard them play live, I think.
Yeah. And then realizing that like it really kind of like fits the vibe, and it is the Celtic, and then as you said, like at the very beginning, like that could have been the concept, right? To have this sort of like world aspect of Celtic music, but then that is really, and then Mont Saint-Michel as that island, or that building on that island, really, what is that?
Yeah.
Is there a connection to Celtic traditions with this building in France? I don't even know. Maybe I could have researched it.
So,
Yeah,
that's a good point. I mean, it goes like the Women of Ireland, which I think one of the reasons why it manages to keep your attention over this fairly long stretch of time is because he, of course, you combines it with classical influences, which was taken out of the Kubrick movie, Barry.
Was it Handel, right?
Yeah, it's Handel.
Yeah.
And then if you look at that movie, the movie also is really interesting because it was shot in using real light. So they shot scenes which were in a dark room using just candlelight, which is also sort of the idea of some like analog in a, like something going back to something really traditional, capturing something real, but within a modern format. You could, I mean, it's potentially endless. And our conversations would be much shorter if you would explain it all away. And especially since Changeling to a degree seems like the Edgar Froese autobiography also has this element of is he just inventing the story, or is it actually historical?
Yes.
And some of it has in Changeling. Does he really think that's how it happened, or did it actually happen that way? But it's sort of the magic of this music that he manages to put all of these things into fairly straightforward music on this album.
Yeah, I see here in the Wikipedia entry for John Reedy, who's the composer of Women of Ireland.
Yeah.
That there's the Stanley Kubrick. Yeah, incredible.
Actually, the soundtrack to that movie.
It's the Chieftains.
Yeah, it's the Chieftains, and it's classical music and folk, and it's a really really cool selection.
Yeah.
Really weird movie though.
Yeah, but like there you go. So also like if we knew more about Mike, like okay, which is he a film guy? Does he know films?
Yeah.
Does he enjoy them? Does he like? We don't really know. It's really interesting.
It's a fascinating selection of influence, like Barry Lyndon, Stephen Hawkins, Tai Chi, Celtic folk, electronic music. So, yeah. Oh, by the way, I think maybe we have to stop talking, but I mentioned because you asked about the inverted cross. Actually, as far as I know, the one of the working titles was Celtic Cross. Before it was
Yes,
called
exactly. Yes, I remember that now. Celtic Cross.
Good name as well.
Yeah. Yeah, but it didn't fit maybe the record company wanted something a little more new age.
Maybe they did, yeah. They could have called it Celtic Voyage.
I'm also like wondering if the album is actually just called Voyager, right?
And it's sometimes called The Voyager, right?
Exactly, but the track is called The Voyager.
Yeah.
That's the difference there. Yeah, I have to say, like in hindsight, I think this is a really moving album. It is very interesting. You have to approach it with an open mind. It is as experimental, you could say, as any Mike Oldfield album, just for the conceptual aspects of it. Mike's playing is absolutely incredible, unbelievable, wonderful here. He sort of like manages to capture something like that, funnily enough, on his let's just call it most recent album, not his last album, Return to Omadon. Like his guitar playing on that is also amazing, I find. It's somewhat really. I think that the albums following Voyager in some respects are let down, even coming from Voyager, which I find interesting. Like now, again, looking at the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
But
yes.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about
yes,
the next few albums in the next few months.
I think it's looking back. For some people, this may have been sort of the beginning of a decline. At the time, I don't think I certainly didn't see it that way. I think I really, really enjoyed it. I listened to it a lot. It didn't really leave like a huge impact, but I was definitely when Tubular Bells 3 came out, I had more issues. But I was definitely still really, really interested in hearing the next album. So this one.
Yeah, for me at the time, it really was very, very difficult. Even though I always try to approach it with an open heart, but it just didn't work that well. That was also, I said that last time already, like this was the time when I was into Fripp and King Crimson, and things were a little more serious, let's say, in that regard, and less more coming from the body or the brain rather than the heart.
Yeah.
So, but having said that, this by no means is an album that is lazy in any way. The playing is, like I said, playing is amazing. Playing requires, this kind of playing he's doing here requires a lot of energy, very energetic, especially also like the contributions of the other musicians, highly energetic and virtuosic.
Yeah.
Then again, like the whole package doesn't really deliver that message well, right? But it is a fact that it's in there.
Well, for sure that first session for Taurus 2, I think was then finished with a lot of alcohol, with what's his name on Julian. Can't remember now, but I know that this seems to be just like this is the new Mike Oldfield, the Tai Chi Mike Oldfield. So there's the calm and serenity of the album, I think, is indicative of this particular phase in his life, which would then, of course, change again.
Yeah, it was actually Rick Fenn was the guitarist of Island's Eye and composer of Island's Eye. I just remembered that here.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I mean, there could be more things to go into, really, details for each piece, but I think it's not really necessary. I think it really is something to be experienced as a whole, this album. Yeah.
Maybe it would have been really nice if he had actually toured this in some way. Like if he had maybe then stripped it down for live performance with an acoustic ensemble.
Absolutely, you're right. You're right. Around this time, or a little bit earlier, he was playing. We were talked about that around the Tubular Bells 2 times.
Yeah.
He was playing solo acoustic on the radio shows and not radio shows, TV shows actually. And that could have been great, just having like his own Irish folk band, and then performing this music and maybe also performing some of his back catalog with a band like that. That would have been amazing. Yeah, like even thinking about it gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he was, well, that's something for next time. I think he was done with touring. I think for Tubular Bells 3 he went to touring because he was sort of not broke, but in financial difficulties.
But he didn't really tour that album. It was
not really, but he did a few.
In the Then and Now tour. Okay, I guess that's it, right?
Yep, for this time.
Thank you so much for listening. There is a Discord server, which we should have mentioned maybe at the beginning of this. Maybe next time I'm going to mention it. So there's a link in the description for the Discord server. Maybe you want to join. And thank you so much. Until next time.
Till then.